What happens when a prestigious black college becomes the battleground for colorism, class warfare, and politics? A real fight over power and identity clashes.
School Daze isn't just a fun look at an HBCU campus. It's a raw, unfiltered look at the secrets and tensions that divide the community from within.
In this cult classic, Spike Lee dared to expose the power struggles, brutal hazing, and taboo desires simmering just beneath the surface of campus life.
Keep watching, because this is a bold wake-up call in the form of a mirror reflecting truths many of us were not ready to face in 1988, let alone now in 2025.
I'm Heit.
And I'm Cheri.
And you've discovered Axiom Amnesia.
We want to thank all of the supporters who helped to make this video possible. If you want your name to appear alongside these contributors, make a one-time donation of $5 or more via our website at axiom.app, Cash App, or you can head on over to patreon.com/axiomamnesia to enjoy all of the benefits of becoming a monthly subscriber. The executive producer of this video is Nita Gentris, who requested this film through Axiom Amnesia's Deep Dive On Demand program that we'll tell you more about later.
And there will be spoilers, so if you don't want to get caught up in those spoilers and us ruin it for you, you might just want to hop up off the call.
Yes. So let's start with a little background on School Daze. First thing I just want to say is I remember when School Daze came out. I was in middle school, and this was...
It makes you want to pledge?
I mean, maybe a little bit, and it made me be excited about HBCUs, although I was familiar with them because, you know, I come from an HBCU family. But yeah, we were excited. We used to sing the soundtrack to this on the school bus and stuff. I mean, it was very much part, like if you imagine how people responded to the TV show Glee back when that came out, I don't know how old Glee was, 10 years or whatever ago, like how that was a whole phenomenon. Like this is what we were doing at this point when I was in middle school. People were excited about the movie. And, you know, as you know, the girls were singing all the songs from the movie, or at least the most popular one. So the first thing that I always like to do when these films are older is go back and look at what the film critics say. And I mean, you know, the most popular film critics of the day were, you know, Siskel and Ebert, right? So Roger Ebert said about this movie, there is no doubt in my mind that School Daze in its own way is one of the most honest and revealing movies I've ever seen about modern middle-class Black life in America.
How you know, bro? How
now,
you know?
Mind you, this is after, well, it's not modern middle class Black America in like The Color Purple or whatever. But, you know, I think he also liked The Color Purple very much, too.
But how you know? It's like I watch, I don't know, Selena and be like, yeah, this is the most honest and revealing movie I've seen on the modern middle class Latino. What?
Well, I just think you have to be from within the culture to judge that a little bit. But I do think that this is the license that we often see taken by the predominant society.
I think it may be okay to say revealing, even though you might be wrong in that. But to say it's the most honest, like, come on, bro.
Yeah. So, I mean, this was Spike Lee's vision. It was his second film. His first film was She's Gotta Have It. And so his second movie was School Daze, and he wrote and he directed it and whatever. He drew inspiration from his own experiences at Morehouse College, and for the culture of HBCUs in general. And his goal was to spark a conversation about issues like Greek life and colorism and social divisions within the Black community. And I should also add that Bill Nunn and Sam Jackson also went to Morehouse. In an interview, Spike Lee points this out, and he said they were a few years ahead of him. And Spike Lee comes from a Morehouse and Spelman legacy family, okay? His father and grandfather went to Morehouse, and both his mother and grandmother went to Spelman.
So did you go to HBCU?
I did go to an HBCU for 2 years. I went to Tuskegee, and my parents both graduated.
The HBCU.
Yes, my grandparents both graduated from Tuskegee, and both of my two out of the four grandparents also went to Tuskegee as well. So I guess we're just a legacy Tuskegee family, as well as, you know, my aunts graduated from there on both sides. I had more than one aunt that who, you know, my mother and one of her sisters went there, and then my father and all of his siblings, you know, 2 sisters and a brother graduated from Tuskegee. So like, yeah, we were, you know, the red and the gold, you know, from a young age. Or whatever. So, you know, so understanding that culture and where people come from, I think is important, you know.
I didn't go to HBCU.
No, you went to a PWI. And I mean, full disclosure, I finished at a PWI, but, you know, this was my first college experience. And boy, am I glad. I do not regret it.
Right. But, okay, did you pledge?
I did not pledge. And I think that's a really good point to make for both of us. Neither of us pledged.
Right.
You know, because
and I didn't go to HBCU.
And because this movie is very much a commentary on, you know, Black Greek life and all of that stuff. So just full disclosure for that.
So I went to LSU, and people I knew, right, people who I grew up with and who went to high school with, they were across town at Southern University, right? So that's probably kind of different than a lot of other people, right? Because they probably just went to a PWI and that was it, right? And there's no other, you know, Black colleges there.
But you were like able to be right in a town where it was easy to feel like you were part of the, you know, culture of an HBCU without that being your campus.
Let me tell you this one thing. I think this was the first, they started a thing where they had the salt and pepper party. And then the Black Greeks and the white Greeks all got together and threw a huge party.
Interesting.
And then, you know, the people, you know, they came from Southern and everything all over. It was just crazy. Craziest thing ever.
Yeah. You know, my parents, when it was time to go to college, they were like, you're going to Tuskegee. Specifically, my dad said this. You know, he was like, well, I don't know where you're going to college, but my money is going to Tuskegee. So guess where Cheri was come freshman year of college? I was at Tuskegee. So, but I don't regret it. I'm so glad I went there. There were so many things that, with the culture that I learned and experienced that I never would have experienced, and that I missed when I did go to PWI. I was like, "Ooh, I see what they mean. Well, I see why."
Yeah.
You know?
So my touch points with these organizations, fraternities, sororities, is from the standpoint of them being at a white college. Yeah. Want us to cover your favorite movie ASAP? A one-time contribution of just $50 or more to Axiom Amnesia gets you a deep dive on demand, a 30-minute discussion on any film you choose.
It's easy. Step 1, send $50 via our website, axiom.app, where you can pay via card, Apple Pay, or you can pay directly via Cash App at $Axiom Amnesia. See the links below. Step 2, tell us your movie, email, the name you want to appear on screen, and what kind of deep dive you want. General, a specific character, a particular aspect of the film, etc. Step 3, watch your deep dive on demand with your name listed as executive producer.
Lock in your deep dive on demand today and hurry. Spots are limited.
This offer is not valid for filmmakers or distributors. Subject to availability and terms apply. Let me just say that. So this was Spike Lee's experience. You guys in the comments can share your HBCU experience, and these are ours. Spike Lee also said about, you know, especially Greek life and his feelings about it. He said, you know, it always amazed me how much abuse and punishment people would put up with just to belong to a group. And then he was pointing out not just Greek, you know, Black Greeks, but any organization. And as you'll see in the film, it is very cliquish, you know, it is very group oriented. And so he did film this film at an HBCU. It was mostly filmed at Clark Atlanta University, but he also filmed at Morris Brown College, but not without controversy, right? Some of the faculty and students objected to the film's depiction of the fraternities and hazing, and it created a lot of tension on the set. In fact, they were actually kicked off of Morehouse's campus for, you know, when they were recording. And Spike Lee said basically they wanted to see the script, and he was like, forget about it. Forget about it. And so he moved, and they did their recording other places. And Spike Lee said in an interview, and you know, I'm just keeping it real with what he said about Morehouse and the administration at that time. He also said that they didn't like Joe Seneca, who plays the president of the University of Mission College in the movie. And he said because he looked too much like Sambo. Like, let me tell you, the stuff that he exposed was some real uppity Negro stuff that I just was like, yeah, they should be exposed for saying that, you know, because that's problematic coming from us. And so they did disinvite Spike Lee to from Morehouse events after this movie came out. Like, there was a backlash, and he was saying that for a while he wasn't invited to like anything, even though this is his alma mater, even though he's probably like one of the most famous people who ever graduated from there, and you know, did something with himself on a, you know, a world stage, if you will. But then he got on the board of trustees, and so suddenly that resolved a lot of that. So let's also talk about like the iconic dance numbers. The film blends drama with musical elements. Actually, it started out more as a musical, and they did cut some of the music scenes. But if y'all
Thank
know,
you, Jesus,
Heit hates musicals. So even the cut down musical scene version of the film, Heit was like, "Yeah, nah, I'm not feeling this." But it does feature these high energy choreographed performances. And so there is this famous scene and song that they do called Good and Bad Hair. And it highlights colorism, and it was inspired by classic Hollywood musicals, but it carried obviously a deeply relevant social message then and now. Okay. And we'll talk more about that when we get to our summary of the film. And then we had a cast of future stars. So the film helped to launch the careers of several now iconic actors, including Lawrence Fishburne. Okay, let's just keep it real though. Lawrence Fishburne was a child actor. He was in Cornbread, Earl and Me. He had been in movie. Stuff. He was also in Apocalypse Now. So it's not like this was what made him, okay?
Yeah.
But I don't
think he was a household name.
I don't think
either.
so. And it reintroduced him to a new generation of people. Like the first movies I saw him in was this movie.
Yeah.
You know, so to me, he was new. You know, my parents may have known him before, but I didn't. Then
and this when the name change happened?
He was, I think, Larry Fishburne in this, but after this, I don't remember exactly when he changed it, but he was billed as Larry Fishburne.
I think he was Lawrence in Boys in the Hood. So it was sometime in between.
Maybe. I don't know. Was he Lawrence in Boys in the Hood? We got to check that.
Okay, he was Larry Fishburne until 1990.
Oh, okay. So Boys
in the Hood, he was Larry Fishburne.
Yeah, and that was 91. So
after Deep Cover, okay.
Okay. After Deep Cover, he was Lawrence.
Okay, What's Love Got to Do with It? He was Lawrence. Okay. 1993.
All right. So for context. And then the next actor who we know as Ginacarlo Esposito, because that's what we've been saying the whole time. But
yeah, his name is Giancarlo Esposito.
Yes. And
Esposito.
Giancarlo Esposito.
Yeah.
And he recently talked about how people have been mispronouncing his name the entire time, but that he let them. Okay. Yeah. But he's decided, like, I'm correcting you now. This is my name. And I feel that, you know, as a person whose name is often mispronounced, especially when people read it first. And, you know, I get called Cheri and other things besides Cheri. So I feel that.
He is very, very popular.
Yes.
Actor.
You know, and Tisha Campbell, you know, was in this. Tisha Campbell was also a child star. And if you know, you know, she was singing and dancing on Broadway and off Broadway, in movies and in TV shows. Way before this, okay? Her and Tichina Arnold, they knew each other from way back. And so Tisha Campbell is in this film, and let's see, she was, if you saw Little Shop of Horrors that came out in the 1980s, she was one of the chicks in the background who would sing all the songs in Little Shop of Horrors, like as the background singer. She was in there. She was in, you know, a TV show that was pretty popular in the 80s. So she was all over the place. And then plenty of other actors that we saw, Bill Nunn, pretty much the whole doggone cast of A Different World was in there. And by the way, we had posted about this, but did y'all know that they are doing a sequel to A Different World on, I think, Netflix? Wasn't it Netflix? I think it's Netflix. I think Netflix, where they're going to be doing Dwayne and Whitley's daughter's experience at an HBCU. So
daughters? They ain't got no sons?
Yeah, I don't know. So I guess we just got to find out. But they're doing a pilot. So how do y'all feel about that? Say it in the comments.
That don't sound right. So the thing about A Different World is that you had Dwayne Wayne and how he was, right? And to have a son who is similar to him, I think would be very interesting.
Yeah. I think it would be nice if they had like two kids that went to the school and could kind of play play themselves, but as a new generation, you know what I mean? Somebody who's kind of like Whitley and somebody like Kim. And, then they go out in an HBCU and we see all of these funny and interesting experiences.
Yeah, maybe Jalissa's daughter is there.
Yeah.
And Dwayne Wayne's son is trying to get with her and stuff,
But listen, it wouldn't be crazy, although that would be a lot like the Boomerang TV show. You guys referred us to the Boomerang TV show after we covered Boomerang on the Heit and Cheri channel. And we watched like an episode of it, and I'll just be honest, it wasn't our cup of tea. I wasn't into it. I really wasn't feeling it. So I didn't watch beyond the first episode. But that is like the premise, right? You have Angela and Marcus I think they have a son. No, they have a daughter.
They have a daughter, yeah.
Then Jacqueline has a son, and then they appear to, I don't know if they got together on the show because I only watched the one episode, but they are both the stars of the TV show.
Yeah, but it make more sense if, you have legacy students who go to the same school.
It makes a lot of sense, because it's a small world.
They're very old. It should be their grandchildren.
Oh, man, that's a hard one. That's a hard one because y'all waited 30 years. Listen, y'all could have done more at the time. It's just,
It's a whole different generation who just don't have that same attachment.
Yeah.
So you probably should just make it for old people, which is a problem when they're doing these things. The stuff we're getting now isn't tailored broadly, right? So this is probably going to be about, okay, women gonna watch this show. You know what I'm saying? It's not something that both men and women probably will be into, and that's how they're making most things. They're really niching down on these TV shows, so we all don't have the same experiences anymore.
That is facts. That's facts. And, for the thing we should also acknowledge is just the legacy of this film. School Daze, it got mixed reviews or whatever upon its release. But do we really care about what mainstream reviews say about our movies? Plus, some of the people in-house was salty with Spike Lee because of his depiction of fraternities and sororities and all of that was going on.
So, of course, you had Spike Lee in there. These were the days where he was trying to star in all the movies and stuff, right? He's half pint. His sister, Joie Lee, right?
Yeah.
Samuel Jackson was in here. Jasmine Guy, of course. Cassie Davis, who is what I consider Tyler Perry actor. Cassie Lemons is in here as well.
She's the one who made Eve's Bayou.
Yeah. Okay. Roger Guinevere Smith, Kadeem Hardison from A Different World as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Ron from A Different World. I forgot his name, the actor.
Darryl Bell.
Yeah, Darryl Bell. Yeah. And just a bunch of faces and names. Bill Nunn, you mentioned him. Tyra Farrell, just
AJ
Johnson is in here. Like everybody, look, if you was anybody at this time, you were like pretty much in this movie as a younger cast. Yes, Ozzie Davis, Joe Seneca, we just it was everybody was in this movie, okay? So yeah, this movie is just it is in our hearts, for the long term. And so it did receive these mixed reviews upon its release, but at the end of the day, nobody was going to stop us from going to see this movie, loving this movie when it came out on VHS, watching this movie over and over again, and it just becoming part of the fabric of Black cinema history, and well worthy of being revisited. So we should do a summary of the film.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do is kind of give our overview of each one of the acts, but then we'll also just kind of go in depth because all of this stuff is important to the film. So, as you know, we always break it down into Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. Act 1, we give the lay of the land. We say, hey, who are the players involved and everything? Act 2, we're presented with a problem, and the problem has to be resolved, and that happens in Act 3, and then that's the end of the film, right? So, in Act 1, let us call this Campus Clashes and Divided Loyalties. So at Mission College and HBCU, tensions are brewing between the politically conscious activist Dap Dunlap, that is Lawrence Fishburne's character, and the status-driven fraternity leader Julian, that is Ginacarlo Esposito, right, his character. Also, who is also known as Big Brother Almighty, Dap and his crew protest against the school's investments in apartheid-era South Africa, while Julian enforces this brutal hazing rituals on the pledges of Gamma Phi Gamma, aka G5G, including Dap's eager yet timid cousin Half Pint, who is played by Spike Lee. Meanwhile, there's an ongoing rivalry between the light-skinned, quote, wannabes who are led by Julian's girlfriend, Jane, that's Tisha Campbell's character, and the darker-skinned jigaboos.
Bruh. Spike Lee, bruh.
Yes, led by Dap's strong-willed girlfriend, Rachel, who's played by Kime. And so their differences play out in a heated homecoming weekend filled with social power struggles, colorism-fueled arguments, and contentious step show competitions, right? And so let us just break down what the details of Act One. So it opens with this song where I don't know who sings the song actually right now, but it's I'm Building Me a Home is the song, and it is sung in a very Paul Robeson-esque, if you know, style of singing. And we're looking at the opening credits with many historical images of Black Americans from the time of the Atlantic slave trade all the way, to current history. And so we find out that it is Friday, it's homecoming weekend, and it's homecoming weekend at Mission College, which is founded in 1883. And so, again, we got Dap, who is giving this lecture on the steps about divesting from South Africa. We see signs that say free Mandela and all that. And the important thing to know is at this point, Nelson Mandela in South Africa is still imprisoned. He had not been released. How many years has he been in prison? Like 30 some years?
27?
Yeah, 27, I don't know, around 30 years, though, in prison that he spent.
27 years.
27 years, okay.
Yeah, there's apartheid in South Africa, and right, and just like all over the world, Black people stood up against it, right? Because you had the Dutch, I believe, who came down from Europe and just colonized the place, and they had up until the 90s, there was apartheid. And so Mandela, he was one of the freedom fighters. They locked him up for 27 years. Then he got out, ran for president, bam. And
was elected.
Now we got
president.
Elon Musk, who's trying to bring that stuff over here.
He's probably the most famous South African in America at this point. So, yeah.
And then number 2 would be the guy from Daily Show.
Okay.
What's his name?
What is his name?
Trevor Noah.
Trevor Noah, yes. Trevor Noah. So, Julian, and again, that's Ginacarlo Esposito, he decides that he's going to, in the middle of this, protest or whatever, he overshadows it by marching his G5G pledges into the middle of the speech. You know what I'm saying? And then, so this shows right away that he is at odds. Julian and Dap are at odds with each other. And Julian is like, we don't agree with this African mumbo jumbo. Bruh. And he says that their activities, talking about Dap and his crew, are detrimental to the college and the people in South Africa. So this is his position. He like, we don't do all of this, and he's worried about, them crossing a line of pledges and stuff. And so we see the hazing of the pledges of G5G. They are bald. They're wearing costumes. It looks it's over the top. It's crazy looking. And, they come marching out. And in reality, having gone to an HBCU, we never saw, it was like the people would just disappear, right? They would just disappear.
Yeah, you don't see the pledges. I think you're not supposed to know. And then they just have their reveal.
Yeah, they just pop out and show. Well, anyway. Yeah. So after that, Half Pint is Spike Lee's character who's in line pledging. He's the number 1 pledge, so he's in the front. And in the discussion about everything that's happening, we also find out that Half Pint is Dap's cousin, like his first cousin. So they are blood relatives, which you will also see a lot at HBCUs. And we find out that Dap had...
Wait, you see a lot of blood relatives?
At HBCUs, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, I think about even like so at one point when my dad was at a Tuskegee, his sister was there at the same time as his brother. It was all 3 of them. I don't even know how my grandparents afforded that tuition because you got 3 kids in college. Yeah, nah. But anyway, yeah. So they were there together, at least for 1 year together. It wasn't obviously the whole time because they're not the same age, but that happened. Right. And so they're cousins, and Julian is teasing Half Pint, aka his name is actually Daryl. He's teasing him because he's talking about him being a virgin and da 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 da. I ain't crossing no virgin on this line and all of that he's saying. And so then we get a bird's eye view into the office of the president, right? And so we have the president of the college along with the head of the board of directors of the college. And they're having this, they're looking down, seeing what's happening and everything. One of them points to a white guy on the wall and he's like, he had a vision, and it's like, a lot of y'all may not know that the HBCUs, while they were founded in many cases by Black people in conjunction with charitable white people.
Because we ain't had the money.
Yeah. To make this happen. And so, and the point that I wanted to make actually about DAP was that DAP actually dropped the line. He had tried to pledge G5G and he dropped out, right? And so this is important because it informs like, okay, why did he drop out? We don't get the exact answer as to why he dropped out, but that could be fueling some of his motivations with his, it feels like hatred, right, of Black Greeks and that whole idea of fraternities and sororities. And so, but back to the office with the president. So they discuss the need for Black colleges and that it does still exist in the 1980s, right? Because people are like, oh, your time has passed. You don't really need it anymore. Black colleges were, they came about at a time where, obviously there was segregation. Black folks couldn't just walk up into into any college, so you had to have some place to go to school. And this is where the idea of the HBCUs came from. But by the 80s, you could go to, quote unquote, state schools, regular schools, go to school. It was integrated, right? So do Black colleges still have a place in society? Are they still important to the culture? Are they still important to Black people? And so we're seeing the case for them. Yes, they are important. But if they're so important, who supports Black colleges? They point out how other groups support their colleges. Catholic colleges support them, but nobody supports Black school. Black people do not support HBCUs is also the message. Hey, if they need us so much, why are they not supporting? So we see already from the get-go that Spike Lee is, he is throwing stones. He is making a commentary with almost every piece of dialogue that we've seen to this point. Then they talk about DAP and how DAP is saying, hey, he wants them to divest from South Africa. And so the chairman is like, you better nip them protests in the bud because our money is coming from the people who won't like that kind of talk, essentially, is what he's saying. So now the heat is going to come on DAP or whatever. And so both Dap and Julian are leaders of their crew. So all of this is okay. Yes, it's the Black Greeks and whatever, but you have all these different cliques on campus. You have the crew, you have your, Dap's revolutionaries, and you have the Black Greeks, and so it's not like it's just only Black Greeks who are, quote, guilty of wanting to be part of a group and being willing to do all of these things to fit into a group. It's just part of human nature, right? To want to be part of the group. Then, Dap tries to get his friends to go back to the administration building to protest later that night. And all his friends are like, tomorrow, they want this homecoming weekend. They want to have fun. And if you've been to homecoming weekend at a Black college, then it is fun, and plenty of activities. They don't want to be standing out there protesting. Like, they're willing to be down for a cause to a point, But meanwhile, you see Half Pint. He's been tasked with going to the dorm to pick up a girl because, they teasing him about being a virgin and he got to go get a girl. And so the first one he talks to said, it's like, yeah, I'll go after you cross, right? So she's interested in dating a Gamma man. And until you don't, get on from around here. And so we see a couple of other women who, they basically all reject him and for different reasons, and then we see the meeting of the Gamma Rays. So the Gamma Rays would be considered like what they might call like the sweetheart group or other names that they have for fraternities, the associated ancillary organization for the girls who are associated with that frat, right?
To serve them.
Yes, essentially. And so that's the Gamma Rays. And the gamma rays are made up of Jane, that's Tisha Campbell's character. You have Dina, who is Jasmine Guy, and all of these basically light-skinned girls, right? For the most part. So they're having their...
Why didn't he make it a sorority?
I don't know why because he didn't even really highlight any sororities for the most part in here. Maybe because of the fact because highlighting like the sweetheart group or whatever would highlight the subservient nature, of, and maybe the sexism involved, I think. And maybe he liked sororities more than he liked the fraternities. I don't know. Oh, but we should also say, like, Spike Lee is not clearly he's not a member of a fraternity. He's and he seemed to be anti that, and we'll talk more about that later. So yeah, so the gamma rays are having their meeting about how they're gonna serve the G5G guys, and they have to clean up and pay for the social events. They're like, oh, let's look, we should throw a party for them when they cross. Let's look and see if we have enough money. Oh, we have enough money for the party. Oh, we need to clean up. So basically they are just like the maids and, just servants of this frat. And then we get to flip to see what is going on with the Gamites. I think they call them Gamites or Gamites. Yeah. So that's the ones that are pledging. And then we have, what's his name? Oh, we have Roger Guinevere Smith's character who starts this funny chant because they're there. Half Pint has the problem of he can't get a girl to come back with him. And they had been told, he was like, he has to bring the, P, right? The C over there, to the frat house and, get it on with the girl. And so his idea, Roger Guinevere Smith's character's idea, he's like, go to the store and buy a cat and label it pussy. And then, present this to Dean Big Brother Almighty or whatever, who is Julian's character, who is Julian. And like this play on words is hilarious. And then they're just like, pass the, and it's one of the funny scenes in the movie, but of which the movie is made up of hilarious scenes, right? And then we see the not so funny parts of it where they get a beating, right? They're hitting them with paddles and stuff. So again, this is the hazing and trying to shed a light on it. Spike Lee brought up the fact that after he left Morehouse that there was somebody from Alpha Phi Alpha who died as a result of hazing incidents or something. The guy had a heart condition and, it was exacerbated through some of the things that went on. And then we just saw recently in the news where Omega Psi Phi, somebody, were they at Southern?
Yeah, Southern University. Mm-hmm. And Caleb Wilson was a student who was also a band member who was pledging and he died.
Mm-hmm. And so, so this is something where people are pledging and being hazed. And, I've heard stories of even sororities who've had girls who've, died as a result of it. And it's just not cool. And that was something that Spike Lee definitely wanted to highlight is the dangers and just, the brutality of the hazing process in many cases with Black Greeks. And so we also see Rachel's crew of dark-skinned girls, that's Dab's girlfriend, running into the gamma rays who are together, and that is Tisha Campbell's character. And they, meet each other in the hall, and they don't like each other, and they're calling them wannabes and jigaboos. And then they have this whole song and dance sequence where they're singing and dancing, and it's very throwback. It's very Broadway-ish. And it's talking about good and bad hair and skin complexion. And it's very appropriate. It was appropriate then. It's appropriate now. And you should go and listen to that song if you've never heard it and watch that sequence.
Recent changes here on this platform are making it harder for you to see our latest videos and get notifications. To make sure you don't miss out on anything, we're building our own community, both on our website, axiom.app, and on Patreon with free and paid options available.
Here's the deal. While you can still watch our videos on YouTube, much of our current catalog and many of our upcoming videos will become unlisted and only accessible to our Patreon, Axiom.app, and YouTube channel members. We'll be posting links to these unlisted videos directly on Patreon and Axiom.app, so you'll be the first to see them, if you're a member.
If you choose the free Patreon option, you will still get access to some exclusive content like watch parties where we watch movies together and give the commentary, and other special videos. But premium paid members will get full access to all of our exclusive content. No new account is needed to join our Patreon. Just log in with your existing social media account.
While some of you may find this announcement disappointing, don't worry, we have no plans to leave YouTube at this point. But you guys are our cousins and our tribe, and we refuse to let platform changes tear us apart. So help us stay connected. Join us on Patreon today at patreon.com/axiomamnesia. You can check the links down below or in the comments. So Rachel's friends later tease her, this is Dap's girlfriend, tease her about Dap, and they want her to date other guys because she's in her junior year. So she's got one more year of college left after this. And they like, you dated him the whole time. You need to date other guys. And she's just like, I like him. I want to be with him, da-da-da-da-da, right? So then the next scene, Heit was like, another song. So we get Jane and Dina, that's AKA Tisha Campbell. It's like a trio. Tisha Campbell and Jasmine Guy are singing this song, I Don't Want to Be Alone Tonight. When I tell y'all that this had us in the grips in 1988 in middle school, where we knew all of the dance routine and we were singing this song like we didn't want to be alone tonight, even though we were in middle school and we were sleeping in our beds at home every night and didn't know a thing about nothing like that. But anyway, we see Dap and Rachel. They are having a discussion about possibly Dap being color struck. And she's like, hey, maybe you only want to date me because I'm one of the darker sisters on campus. And basically it's good for your image to be with a darker, woman, because that's part of, hey, I love black, the darker the berry, the sweeter the juice, all of that stuff. Right. And then, but that doesn't matter because they just do. Right. And then we get a whole nother song, where the lyrics are basically like, you can only be you and I can only be me, which is very apropos in this because we see a lot of people not wanting to be themselves, right? They are changing. They're being different to be part of this group, these cliques that are on campus, but then in a broader way, because of wanting to assimilate into what the society says is the ideal. Like when you have a wannabe, right? Want to be white, want to be better than me. All, those are the implications. And so this song really kind of speaks to that. And I like it. And it's a beautiful song. And I remember I used to always think in the beginning, even though we see the guy who's singing the song, I was like, dang, that sounds so much like Stevie Wonder. Did y'all think he sounded like Stevie Wonder? Because I did. And that gets us through Act 1. So then in Act 2, we have betrayals and breaking points, right? Dap and Rachel, they get into it because she expresses this desire to pledge. She wants to pledge Delta, and obviously Dap is very anti-frat, anti-sorority, and so he talks bad about her for wanting to do that. She leaves, and then they kind of fall out. Then we see Julian. He's expressing the desire that he wants to get rid of Jane. He's talking to his frat brothers, and they're all like, well, you happy? We got to get us some new gamma rays because you got the finest one, and these gamma rays is dry, and all of this and that. And so he's like, well, I want to get rid of her. She's too young and immature and so on. And then Dap is also at the same time frustrated with his peers, their lack of activism, and wanting to do stuff. And so then that boils over. And we also see these public confrontations between G5G and Dap's crew, right? But even despite this, Half Pint, who is Dap's cousin, still remains loyal to his cousin. He's still kind of talking to him behind the scenes, and his cousin is talking to him behind the scenes and trying not to blow up his spot. So as G5G is hazing, their hazing of the pledgees escalates, eventually they finally cross and they become members of the frat. So then in Act 3, we'll call that a wake-up call. We see Julian, and this is like the most trifling of things, but we see Julian manipulate Jane and Half Pint into sleeping together, supposedly to prove their loyalty to the frat. And so unbeknownst to Jane, Julian also has offered her up to Half Pint. So he talks to them individually, and then he does it in front of everybody. He's like, yeah, now y'all go in the room and do. And it's actually called like the bone room, which is really kind of crazy. And so he humiliates both of them in the process. And so after, basically there's wild partying because it's the Saturday night of homecoming weekend. Is wild partying going on. Relationships are messed up. Dap is frustrated. And at the end of the movie, and I'm kind of skipping through, but at the end of the movie, we see that Dap, after everything happens and he finds out that Half Pint done slept with Jane and, just everything is crazy. He just runs around the campus screaming, "Wake up." And this message is directed at both his peers and at the audience, right? And so the sun is rising. Everybody's waking up after this long night. The students are gathering. Even the president of the university is out there. Everybody's out there in their pajamas or whatever. And they're just silently absorbing the weight of their actions and choices. We see people who would have been taking the, what do they call that? The walk of shame, where, you've been in somebody's room and whatever, you coming out from who you done laid up with the night before. Dina at the end, because Dap.
It was shame in 88. Ain't no shame.
It was
now.
shame in 88. It's not really that much shame in 2025. So, so much happens in this film. And, one thing I do want to wrap up is that in the end, Julian does he basically gaslights Jane. And he says, "Oh, Jane, this was your final test and you failed it." And he tries to act like he didn't intend for her to sleep with Half Pint, which we all know is some BS or whatever. And he just wanted to get rid of her anyway. So she's shamed. And then he just turns around and gets with Jasmine Guy's character, Dina. And they waking up in the bed together. And you see Jane looking all sad and, ostracized or whatever. And yeah, so it was just a whole mess. But this is how the movie ends. And I've skipped over a lot of things that we can kind of touch on better in our discussions, because there is really enough for a good 10 videos on School Daze. And we're trying to get through as much as we can with this deep dive. And we just appreciate, that somebody requested this film because there's so much going on. So let us talk about impressions of the film first. Did you find the film entertaining?
Yeah, it's entertaining. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was very entertaining.
The songs and stuff aren't entertaining. So, but I kind of like The Butt by EU. And, they have a performance in there where they perform that song. So that's all right. And it's only because of the nostalgia, not that I would just, in my own time, put the song on and play it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the other songs, I don't have this attachment to.
When did you first see the movie?
I don't know. Probably around the time it came out.
Did you? Okay, so do you think you went to the theaters or you saw it at home when it came on VHS?
It's probably on VHS or something.
Yeah, I know I saw it in the theaters. I don't remember the incident of seeing it in the theaters, but I know I saw it in the theaters. So let's get to the discussions. First thing, we have to talk about Spike Lee's feelings about Black Greeks. And this is from an article by Dean Treadway, where he had interviewed Spike Lee way back when he made the film. And it's from his blog, and we'll link that in the description. But anyway, this is an excerpt. It says, "Through this probing, Lee gets to vent his ill feelings about the Greek system." And this is Spike Lee talking now. "The whole concept and meaning of fraternities, I'm talking specifically about Black fraternities because that's what I know, has been corrupted over the years. I mean, what do fraternities do? These people, they're full of shit. They say they're supposed to do all this community work. My experience is the only community work they ever do is they might collect a couple of cans at Thanksgiving, and that's it. And that was it. This is the quote of what Spike Lee says. And so then Dean Treadway goes on to narrate, "The filmmaker doesn't even agree with the conviction, at least not in principle, that fraternities give certain social advantages to those who pledge." And so this is Spike Lee, what he says on that. And I quote, "I think a person's going to have to try to find in themselves the things that will make them a better person and not go looking in an organization or another person. I mean, you think because now you're wearing purple and gold because you're an Omega, or black and gold because you're an Alpha, or red and white because you're a Kappa, all of a sudden you're a better person? That's a fucking lie."
Yeah.
This is what Spike Lee is saying.
Denial of Death. I'm always going to bring that up.
Yes.
Ernest Becker.
A book that you guys should read. And so this is how he felt back in like 1988 time frame when the movie came out.
But it was probably fresh out of college and his experiences while he's in college.
Yeah.
Right. So what college student is really doing some things, right? There may have been people like Dap, right? But most of the folks are not, right? And they're just there to party until they become mature.
Mm-hmm. Does School Daze challenge traditional portrayals of Black identity? And how do you think it approaches these themes of colorism and class? Like, does it still resonate? Did it age well to you or not?
I don't know if it challenged those ideas, right? It just showing a certain thing, right? So I think, right, we have this idea where we call them a Black Greek, right? And you're not Greek. You know what I'm saying? So that's this whole idea of wannabes. Basically, when Samuel Jackson's character is confronted with the Black Greeks, right? Mm-hmm. Then, you know, they're like, okay, you're the wannabes, right? Because it's about these, you have these different aspects, right? So you are privileged to be going to these institutions, right? And we're just the regular people. So you're trying to be like that. And then when you get on that level, then you got the same thing. So then, you know, after they have this confrontation, when they're driving along, then Bill Nunn's character, I believe, is like, yeah, I'm a Greek. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about Black identity, but somehow it's attached to a white identity.
Yes. And so just a little more context, because we didn't talk about this part in detail in the summary, but there's this part where Dap and all his friends go to KFC, which might have even been called Kentucky Fried Chicken.
It was Kentucky Fried Chicken.
But they go to what we know now as KFC. And so Samuel L. Jackson is one of the patrons, and he's with the crew of people who are from the town, right? And so this is another dynamic that happens in these small college or not so small college towns, right? You have the people who grew up there and who live there, and then you have the people who from all these other places who descend upon this town, and they are changing the culture of the town. They are coming in, looking down on the people who are from there and stuff like that. And so there is a natural opposition to that from the people in the town because they don't like how they're being treated and stuff like that. And so Sam Jackson and his crew are the people from the town, and they see those college kids, and he said that the college kids talk down on him and they take their jobs. They take their jobs. So you come into town and you just want a job to get through school, but you taking jobs that other people need, right? And then he says, you niggas think y'all white. Y'all niggas, he said, y'all niggas and y'all gonna be niggas just like us.
Yeah.
Their crew is, like you said, accused of being the wannabes. And then we kind of realize that wannabes is relative.
Yeah, exactly. So even, you know, when they're driving away and stuff, they're talking about maybe they tried it and given up. Mm-hmm. Right? It's just like, oh, we're trying to better the race, you know, and they're not even trying because they look at us a certain way. Then they just gave up, right?
Shut up.
Because you're not looking at the financial aspect. You're not to the level of DAP, right?
And you're privileged. That's the other point here. Is they're privileged Black people going to school. You know, like, think about it. Dap is able to just be a revolutionary because his parents are probably paying for school. And even if they're not, he has some circumstance that allows him to not be working and go to school for 4 years. That is his disposition. But if it was different, he may not have been able to do that if he had responsibilities to take care of family at home, or if he had, you know, other things that had to happen. But Dap does say before they drive off, he's like, you're not niggas. And so then we get a commentary on
you're
the
not
N-word.
niggas. He got called a nigga. Then he goes and he confronts Julian. And then Julian's like, I'm a Greek.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So we got all this identity in this one scene about, I think that's where it kind of comes to a head. And, you know,
movie,
where there's a actual, you know, challenge to the views.
And to me, the thing about that is, okay, two things. One, James Bond III, he's playing Monroe, who is one of the guys that's in the car with him. He's kind of the nerdier guy that's in that scene. Note that because he also wrote, directed, and starred in Death by Temptation that we also recently covered. And so Bill Nunn and Sam Jackson were also in that movie as well as this. So, you know, there is like this.
And you have Ernest Dickerson, who's the director of photography, and he did both of those, I believe. Mm-hmm. And maybe bamboozled. He had something to do with that, but he had a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Especially from these times and working with Spike Lee.
So let's talk about how, Julian is walking on campus with his girlfriend at the time, Jane. And that's when Dap is like, pull over the car. And then he goes and he tells Julian, like, my cousin is going to be a Gamma Man. So you going to make sure he crosses. And if you screw him over, then I'm going to screw you over. Is basically, so he's giving him a not so thinly veiled threat. And then that's when Julian he's like, I am a Greek, like you were saying. And then he goes on to say, he's like, without question, we are all black and you don't know a thing about Africa. And Dap responds that he needs to wake up. So, but I think more is being said, and it's easy to say that Julian is all wrong. But in reality, Dap only knows a little bit, right? He knows enough that he knows the headlines, but we don't get any impression. We get the impression that Dap, a lot of what's going on is that he is also performative. Right. He's like, I need the dark skinned girlfriend. I need to wear kente cloth. I need to try to dress like a revolutionary, it's also performative.
Do you think Spike Lee speaks of himself? Right. Because he makes these portrayals all the time. And does he include himself in these representations?
Well, and here's the thing. Maybe who he is part of all of it. Some of it's in all of these characters, right? Yeah. Because and back to the idea of him not pledging, I would like to know, because I think it's very noble and you come out looking way better to act like I'm this revolutionary. And of course, I would never need to be part of a group. Of course that. But then you look at Spike Lee at the time, you look at him playing Half Pint. And I don't really know. Somebody who knows about the stories of Spike Lee and Morehouse may have a better feel, but maybe he wasn't one of the cool kids. Maybe he wasn't one who would have been, welcomed into the fraternities of the day. And as a result of that, he just became anti. Maybe he tried to pledge and they didn't let him, because all we know is that he didn't seem to pledge, right? So
right, but maybe he tried and then he saw what it was and was like, come on now.
Could be that. Maybe he is both Dap, right? Dap tried and dropped out. Now, did they make Dap drop out, or did Dap come to a realization? He could be both Half Pint and Dap at the same time. Yeah. Spike Lee is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but see, my thing is that, right, I'm shining this light on these different, very heavily flawed characters, right? And in your pursuit of doing that, then you too are that, right? Because maybe you don't know as much as you know, but you're turning this lens on it, right? So these things, I think, like this one is more like, a heavy satire, right? To an extent where it's like, oh, this is quote unrealistic, right? Because it's overly done, right? You know what I'm saying? Like the characters are somewhat caricatures, right? And you're not really looking for every nuance with them. And from this time until maybe Bamboozled, he was a lot more subtle in his portrayal of the characters. And maybe even what's the one after this? Do the Right Thing. Maybe it toned it down a little more, right?
And refocused on something else. Yeah,
but between that, it was just like, okay, you're trying this thing in a satirical way, maybe in Bamboozled, the way your portrayals is, kind of off.
Yeah, it could be, so Spike Lee, though, I take into account his age. He was around 30 when this was done, I think, or close to, if he wasn't 30. I feel like he had a lot of experiences, right? And he had a way to kind of say his commentary on all of these things. But I also think about, like, it's with regard to like Black Greeks and all of that. And not to be judgmental, because I know a lot of y'all are members of, sororities and fraternities and stuff like that. And I've been members of organizations. I've, been hazed as part of that.
I've been members.
Heit has experienced hazing.
Yeah, I've been members of revolutionary organizations.
And well, that, and you've experienced hazing. Yeah. And so we've both been there with being part of a group and experiencing what it takes to become part of a group. I want to be clear about that. But, it seems so absurd in the film when Julian is like, I am a Greek. But you know what? I've heard
Does it?
people. It seems over the top. But I've heard people say that they're like, "I'm a Black Greek."
Yeah,
I'm a Greek,
I don't think it seems absurd because I've heard and seen people say
right?
it. Yeah,
this is what they say, and then there's also like you listen to. So even if there are different fraternities and sororities and people who are members of the Divine Nine and all of that, right? And I shouldn't say it that way, but because I don't mean an insult, but I'm saying of the Divine Nine, right? If they're members. Many of them, if you watch YouTube videos and you watch other people talk about it, then they start to talk about the GDI, the person who's not a member of that. So it doesn't even matter. Like they accept that you are a Black Greek, so to speak. They accept that, and the people who are all playing that game, so to speak, right? And anybody who's outside of that, regardless of if I'm in a different organization, right? From you, a different fraternity or sorority, it doesn't matter. It's like you're part of us because we are the Black Greeks and everybody else is a GDI, right? Yeah. And it's very derogatory and whatnot. And it's funny to me because I always thought like, man, GDI is being used as an insult, and
many organizations have things like this, right?
Yeah,
and it's on various levels, right? So even the military, you got your military, you got your civilians, right? Then you got the grunts, and then you got the pogues, people who are not grunts, and it's just all sorts of things. And then even if you get out to, hey, you got deployed, right? Some people didn't go outside the wire. Some people are, fob bunnies or whatever they call them, right? It's just
but what it boils down to is a way to otherize people who you feel are unworthy or don't have your experience, and a way for you to falsely bolster your own self-esteem by saying I'm in some way special or different or better than other people because of my affiliation with this organization. And I'm not just coming down on Black Greeks. I'm saying like any group that you're a part of. And even if you look at how nationalism works, right? If you look at how, hey, we're Americans and we do, it's all the same psychology. Again, y'all really need to go and read Ernest Becker's book, Denial of Death, because it really talks about the part of the psychology that makes people want to belong to groups and be willing to do doggone near anything in order to be a part of groups. And so that is definitely a good point. And one thing that we didn't really discuss is there is the step show that takes place in the movie, which I think is also very nostalgic. If you watched Different World, you would see scenes of the stepping. And I think that that's like one of the most fun things associated with, watching the sororities and fraternities
that is
perform.
The marketing of them, right? When you see them all dressed together and they got their routines and stuff, and then you see this group, you like, I like that group, right? If you see just a random dance crew on the corner and stuff and they pop locking and stuff, you like, oh man, them cats, I like them cats, right? So that is what bolsters their identities and stuff,
and that's the marketing. That's what makes you want to be part of the group. You like, they look so cool, they look so smooth, or look at all the pretty girls, I want to be one of them.
And then it's like, oh, look at these dudes, all the chicks want these cats. You know what I'm saying? So all I got to do is just get beat for a couple weeks. Come on, let me get.
They're like, I'm willing to do anything to get some.
So, okay, I was at a PWI, but you know what this one girl told me?
What?
Well, we was in the elevator. She say, all I take is Omega dick.
Shut up. And this is like,
Exactly. It's like, wait, what? That's so weird.
Well, the fact that you said it and
Yeah, but that's how people are attracted to these things.
Power.
It's a thing.
Right? It's power, it's influence, and people love power and influence, and they want to be adjacent to it as much as they can be.
Right. And so, when Spike Lee is talking about like there's really no benefits of it, of being in those groups, there are, right? You could smash who you want. And so like, I have another channel, Heit the Great, right? And I know this writer who is an alpha, right? And we're pretty close. So I wanted to interview somebody in hip hop, right? Who he knew, and he was like, oh yeah, that's my frat brother. And he called him up and he's like, yeah, he gonna do it because he's my frat brother. And I told him to do it.
And so like that really, so there are some connections. I think Spike, I don't know, which makes me question, like, he's very hard, or was it in 1988? Because maybe some things have changed now. I don't know. But it makes me question, like, why are you so angry? Like, did something go wrong?
But when you say he's like 30, I think he was born in like 57. If he's like 30 at the time, you're still kind of old at that in relation to college years and stuff.
Maybe it still hurt a little bit.
But you should have known a little more, maybe.
You know, but so I say that, and for context, you know, it's not like so it happens that neither of us pledged, but we have people in our families who did, both of us, you know, so it's not as if like we don't, you know, again, it just was our own personal choice and decision. And maybe not even that, maybe not even just that. It's that you left. Okay, to be clear, I certainly wasn't evolved at that point in my life to say that I wouldn't have pledged. So I'm not saying that. It's just that I went to an HBCU for 2 years and then I went to a PWI. And, you know, then after that, you know, you living life and I'm taking care of myself. I ain't got that time. I ain't got that money. I ain't got that money.
So we kind of had this thing, right? So where we would say we had a fake fraternity, right? And it was like all the other fraternities fail you, try theta. And it was this idea of not pledging, right? And it was theta. Try theta. Yeah. But so we were talking about like these groups and stuff, but even like being HBCU, right? People be like, oh, you went to a PWI. You didn't even go to HBCU. And then there's this kinship of HBCUs. But what's crazy is, so one of my cousins was going to Grambling, right? And I went there with somebody for, I don't know, something. I went up there for. Yeah, I visited. And I seen my cousin up there just randomly. And she was just like, oh, excited. She's like, oh, you're going to be coming? No, I'm not coming here. I'm gonna be over there at the white school. Don't worry.
So yeah, but I mean, you know, so it's not that I'm personally, I don't have the same feelings as Spike Lee. It just happens that was the trajectory of my life. And then at the point when I was paying my own bills, I was like, do I really have money to be, you know, participating in these sorts of things while I'm trying to make my life happen? Yeah, nah. So that was how it turned out.
Yeah, so the film do show this idea of, I don't know where your manhood is attached to this as well, too. And we can say now, we seen the one guy who was gay, right? And he came out with his heels and stuff. I think he was gay. I don't think he was trans and stuff. And then there was this uproar about, oh my God, he need to do that on his own time. Don't wait till after you pledge and you basically are anti-gay and then come out as gay publicly.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what Half Pint, you got to make sure you smash a lady. You got to be a womanizer and all this stuff to be a part of this group.
Know someone who's obsessed with movies? Surprise them with the ultimate gift, a personalized 30-minute Axiom Amnesia deep dive on demand on their favorite film. For just $50, they'll get exclusive insights and see their name as executive producer. Get yours today at axiom.app.
Spike Lee can be wrong on his personal ideas, but I think a lot of the stuff that he put in the film just makes sense, right?
It does. And I, you know, as I look at this and, you know, here we are at over an hour at this point, like we need to do some breakdowns of scenes from this film because we are just like scratching the surface. This is in no way it just is very difficult to cover all of the stuff that was important about this film. Yeah. But obviously the big things are the cliques and just the social politics that's happening on the campus, you know, at the time.
You got the whole colorism part of it too.
Which is huge. It's huge. I mean, and then at that time, you know, and even Tisha Campbell was talking about it. She was saying how, you know, like you cannot deny that there is color privilege and, you know, her being lighter skinned and she talks about, you know, her family and stuff like that. Like that, like we don't even need to start at the debate about whether it exists. There's definitely color privilege. So and no conversation we have is going to start like, okay, let's talk about it. Are there privilege? Yes, there are. And so let us continue on that, you know, talking about that.
Why did he call them wannabes and jigaboos?
Because I think it was the most derogatory thing you could think of in each direction. The worst thing that someone else would say. But let me tell y'all something. And this is, so when I think about jigaboo, I think about like, you know, somebody who, you know, like the worst caricature of Black people. I think about, you know, the figurines that you see like from the movie Bamboozled, which we covered. I think about, you know, big red lips and blackface and, you know, just the worst, the stereotypes, the caricatures. And I think that was so deliberate by him, so deliberate.
Right.
And,
yeah. So that's why I was talking about why like there was very extreme in its, satirical nature of this, right? Because we don't typically get black people just outright calling each other those terms like that.
Nah, but we call each other other things like nappy head and
exactly.
right?
And
I just,
I think that term is supposed to encompass all of that, and that's just what you're getting at.
But what I want to say is that when this is one reason I don't like when people do to make references to people's hair. You need to lay your edges down. You need to do this, because the whole thing is steeped in this notion that in order to appear kempt or not to be unkempt, right, is to make yourself most presentable to white people. But you're like, no, I'm making myself presentable to me. But all of those things are, like in this movie, the wannabes were wearing blue contacts and straightening their hair, while all of the jigaboos had hair that was in its natural state and stuff like that. And, worshiping skin colors that are on the lighter side, like all of that. I hate it all. But
I just kind of see where we are now, though, right? So it was, through the 70s, we had this idea, we're going to be natural and stuff. Then it just sort of started going away, right? And by the, we got the Cheri curls. And by the time we get to 1988, we're getting away even from the Cheri curl, right? So we get into the late 80s, early 90s. Then we're trying to be all the way straight with the weaves and the perms
weaves
again.
Ooh, and looking back in the day, the weaves were so stiff.
But now look where we are.
Full disclosure, I have worn weaves before back in the day. Everybody was getting them weaves up in their head, but go ahead.
Yeah, so where we are now is that women wear just long straight weaves, and that's the hairstyles.
Wigs. It's a complete, forget even weaving something in. You ain't even got, just give me the whole wig. It's not even
styled to me. I don't know, maybe it is styled somehow, but it's just straight.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and I look at those different times now, right? And I'm like, okay, there's people talk about even the hairstyles of the 90s and stuff, and like, oh, look at that, and there was a big pineapple, and it was character and something different. Now it's just very straight. But we got to this time, maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago, where it's kind of like, quote, natural is coming back, or there's this natural trend or natural fad. Right. And, a lot of people probably going to point to that and be like, a lot of people are wearing natural now.
I'm wearing protective style, which involves me gluing a wig to my head. No, let me shut up.
Yeah. But that.
Full disclosure, I have glued a wig to my head before, like maybe 20, 25 years ago. But go ahead.
But yeah, so like if Spike Lee is confronting this in this film and we see where we are today, it's just kind of like, yeah, but this didn't change any bit of the culture, but you pointed out some things. So do you think it had some, besides for the artistic nature, some impact on the culture, right? Because this is the same time you have Bill Cosby in them, right? And the Cosby Show and A Different World, which is like, all right, bigging up HBCUs, and it's kind of, let's take a critical look at this.
Well, so I think Spike Lee is a huge supporter of HBCUs, and I don't think the intent was to be anti that, which I think was the fear of the HBCUs, that it would be anti that.
Yeah, clearly.
I walk away from this film and I still want to go. I still want to be at dancing at the step show. I still want to be at the games. I want the culture of it, and that doesn't stop. But there are things, just because it's our culture doesn't mean there aren't issues that are problematic.
Yeah, but has it been positively impacted by this, right?
I think it went down in history as a depiction. I don't think it stopped. I don't think it pulled the coattails. It's just like it puts it in your face, but it's just like anything else getting put in your face that you just are like, okay, cool. All right. I hear you. Great think piece, but I'm gonna still go back and do what I do. That's problematic. And that's just how people are. That's how humans are. So, did it? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Not in that way. But it just is like, I love that it's on record, right? I love that it's on record.
And we can point back to it, like when the situation happened at Southern University in 2025. Hey, look, Spike Lee was, made a film about it 35 years ago.
same thing's still going on, you know? And so that hasn't necessarily changed. And, you know, and I think that's important. But I would love to talk more about this film because there's just a lot to get into. But I do want to thank the executive producer of this film, Nita Gentris, who saw fit to have us cover this film, and we appreciate you so much. And by the way, those of you who are interested, we do have some slots for co-executive producers that are a little bit less expensive. And so if you check our website at axiom.app, you'll be able to be one of the co-executive producers along with one other person for a limited set of films that we are interested in funding, or videos on films that we want to fund.
If you made it this far, type Big Brother Almighty in the comments so we'll know you're one of the real ones who stick around.
And be sure to check out one of the videos that's on the screen right now.